Hello. Today is Friday, October 23rd, and we'll be looking at the 23rd chapter of the book of Acts. In chapter 23, it's the same paragraph that we left off in chapter 22. And so it is Paul before the Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin is a combination of Sadducees and Pharisees. And what happens in this trial basically is that Paul addresses them and he says, I'm a Pharisee. And then it explains in the book that Pharisees believed in maybe the possibility of resurrection and definitely in angels and spirits and other things, and Sadducees didn't. And so his presence there causes conflict between the two groups. And then the commander was afraid that Paul would be torn to pieces by these two groups fighting. And so he ordered Paul to be taken back to the barracks. Now, while Paul's in the barracks, there is a plot hatched, a conspiracy by 40 men who've pledged to not eat or drink until they have killed Paul. And they have a plan in place to, when Paul is brought again, before the Sanhedrin, they will kill him before he gets there. And his nephews intervene. His sister's sons come to him and tell what's going to happen. And Paul sends them on to, calls one of the centurions and sends them on to the commander. So that one of the nephews, goes to the commander and tells the commander about this plot and how dangerous. Please don't send him to the Sanhedrin tomorrow because there's this plot against him. And so what the commander does, and this guy's apparently, his name is Claudius Lysias, he sends a letter to Governor Felix and he spirits Paul away at 9 p.m. at night to Caesarea. So he moves Paul to a new place and sends a letter with him explaining the plot and what was going to happen. And so he wants to protect Paul from, vigilante justice, I guess that's going to befall him. They took Paul with them during the night and brought him as far as Antipatris. And that's the town that it mentions there. And the next day, they let the cavalry go with him while they returned to the barracks. And the cavalry arrived in Caesarea, and they delivered the letter to the governor and handed Paul over to him. So now Paul's under the auspices of a Governor Felix. And so that's where we leave at the end of chapter 23. And there's this is the action-packed sequences. And what Paul even mentions here that he is supposed to go to Rome and be in Rome. But when he's in this uproar, when the Sadducees and Pharisees are fighting with each other in his Sanhedrin trial, the next night, God stands near Paul, it says in here, and this is 23:11. The following night, the Lord stood near Paul and said, "Take courage. As you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so must you also testify in Rome." And so this is an idea that's planted in Paul's brain that even though he's ready to be killed, he can't be killed here because he needs to go to Rome eventually. And he's not in Rome. He's in Jerusalem. And so that is part of how he forms his plan. And this is, again, being led by the Spirit, knowing when to hold him and when to fold him and when to walk away and when to run. So he's being led by these visions that he gets by the Spirit of God involved in his life. He can only offer himself every single day for the mission and then try to learn what the Spirit has for him to go forward. So I think that's the biggest lesson from 23 is that he knew not to let this plot get him. His nephews got involved in it as well. They were part of the agents of rescue, and also this commander of the centurions. And this commander was also an agent of trying to get the plans into motion and transferring Paul to Caesarea and saving him from this horde of 40 men that are hungry and thirsty and out for blood. So it's just another example of how I think Paul is following God's lead with all this. When Paul needs courage, God delivers it to Paul. When Paul needs rescue, God delivers. And what it teaches us is to rely on that spirit and to rely on that provision from God, especially in the times that we're living in. We will see later what happens with Paul. But for now, Paul is being very, obedient to the Spirit, and not, he's ready to die, but he's not going to let he's not going to let his death happen in this way, because he's been told previously by God, by the Lord, that he needs to be in Rome. So he knows he needs to go to Rome. So when this nephew comes to him and says, this is a plot, they have to fix the problem. And I hope you enjoy this chapter, because there's a lot of action going on here, and it's hard to keep track of, but he is he kind of lobs a political bomb among the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and they start to fight, but then God comes to him with comfort and nourishment. So I hope that you will see that in your life today. Have a good day.